All right, here we are. Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025. This is the usually weekly live stream on the C47's YouTube channel. My name is Jem Schofield, and good to have you here. Marshall, what's happening? Um, Here we are. We are doing things, and actually, I like to just make sure I just did an update to Ecamm Live, so hopefully everything is working correctly. I'm just checking a couple of things here, getting little notifications and all that kind of stuff. Let me just make sure that everything's fine. Interesting. Okay, well, I'll talk to you about that in a second. I I did this update to Ecamm Live. They have completely rewritten parts of this particular software. And I guess first and foremost, I just want to make sure that everybody can see and up and hear me. Marshall's giving me the heads up on that. So that's okay. So that's still working. I can see the chat, so that's still working. But when I updated Stream Deck, I get lots of different question marks. So I can't see how many viewers or any of that kind of stuff, and that's okay. I mean, it's not the end of the world. I just sometimes like to have some sort of idea of that, so I can hover over the Ecamm Live thing and see that we have 6 people. I'm DeBrown. What's happening? Arctic Florida. What about Arctic New Orleans, Louisiana? That's some crazy stuff that's going on down there. It shouldn't be. So when they start seeing penguins going through the French Quarter, then we know things are really heading north, I guess. It's cold everywhere right now. It's cold here in Oregon. It's not as cold as the East Coast, but we woke up to sort of mid 20s, which is nothing. I mean, that's a heat wave compared to what the East Coast is dealing with. But we are in a what I like about what's happening right now, which reminds me a lot of East Coast winters when the storms aren't happening, is it's cold but it's sunny, and there you go. Um, so how's everybody doing? It's been a couple of weeks since we've done a live stream, and I like to get housekeeping out of the way at the what is happening, DJ. I heard up there in Toronto, it is cold as ice. Pat, good to have you. I'm wondering, sorry, I was just going to do some housekeeping, but I'm seeing the post. Pat, are you back from Los Angeles? Because I know you were down there at the same time I was there. And have you come back to Oregon? I just saw that there's another fire that's broken out in northern Los Angeles. It doesn't seem like it's right by, maybe I'm wrong, a heavily populated area. But I don't know. Ono says it's 4 Fahrenheit in Baltimore and cloudy, but the days are getting longer. I noticed that yesterday too. I went outside at the end of my workday thinking it was going to be pitch black, and it wasn't, and the clocks haven't changed yet, but I know everybody's dealing with that stuff. Pat's still down in Beaumont waiting for assignment, hoping to head to the new fire. Not words I would expect somebody to say, hoping, but this has been your career. You are a career firefighter, and I think you have a lot of experience based on our conversations, specializing in these types of fires, forest fires, and things like that. Oh, so you have been working. So Pat did go down and work to fire near San Diego yesterday. Yeah, it's not over down there. It's just not headline news. You're not seeing that as one of the things. And then I'm the Brown was stuck in airports. It sounds like. I think is that what you're saying because of the storms and the flights and the weather and stuff. DJ, we have to catch up at some point. And yes, thanks to Pat and everybody else, first responders and all the firefighters and everybody in emergency services who are doing what they're doing. We're not too smart. We run in when everyone else runs out. 16 hours of delays is no bueno, as they say. So I'm sorry you're dealing with that. Also, I'm DeBrown. That's kind of awful stuff, but good to have everybody here. Yeah. So it's here. Let me get the housekeeping out of the way. A couple of things. Number one, next Wednesday, which is the 29th, I don't believe we're going to be able to pull off a live stream. And that's because at Kerner Camera in Portland, Oregon, from 12 to 4 p.m., there's going to be an event. Paul Hawkhurst from Canon is going to be there doing stuff related to, specifically focused on the Canon Cinema EOS C80 and the Canon Cinema EOS C400. And I'm really going there because I know Paul, and it's always fun to have a community type of thing. So if you are in the general area of Portland, just go to Kerner Camera's website, I believe, and that's where you can register for the event. That's my understanding. But if you go on the interwebs and you look up Canon and Paul Hawkhurst and all that kind of stuff, then I am saying his name correctly, I hope. I never say his last name. I always just refer to him as Paul. So just give me 1 second. Let me make sure I'm not butchering that, because I hate. It's not that I'm great with names, and you're right, the pie is ready. Though there wasn't a noise that signaled that, Brandon. But good to have you here. Yeah, let's see if we can get this to work out. Here we go. Boom. Okay. Let's see. And just, you know the deal. If you're one of the regulars, put an at the C47 there, and we will start some conversations. Yeah, Hawkhurst. HAWXHURST. Never said his last name to him in person. Why would I? But he's going to be the one that's running the event and doing the presentation. We're in double digits. We hit 12. Come on, let's go. Let's get some people here. So yeah, so lots of things happening here. I just got back last Wednesday, a week ago, from Los Angeles, which is why there was no live stream. I was actually on an airplane during the normal live stream time, and that was definitely a little bit of an experience, not Pat's experience, but it was interesting going down to Los Angeles and not reaching out to everybody that I know. I already reached out to them before the fires to make sure that everybody was safe. We do know family member in particular and close friends who lost their homes, but everybody that we know personally is okay physically. So that's a good thing. So yeah, but yeah, so I was down there to do a project for a lighting company. I got there on Sunday morning and just sort of did a little bit of prep at the hotel. I did a couple of episodes. If you follow the Daily Drop, I was at the Los Angeles Marriott Airport Hotel, which is where I normally stay when I'm down there, and a lot of first responders there from Palo Alto and Santa Clara, and then also Jose Andres, his world, is it One World Kitchen, I think is what it's called specifically, and tons of trucks and people from there. Not Jose, but he was really on front lines over in Pacific Palisades and stuff. There's lots of videos of him in interviews and with celebrities and all that kind of stuff, but it's amazing work that he's doing. We are definitely going to spend the next 51 minutes talking about which batteries perform best in cold weather. That's funny. Yeah. So that's the deal. So I'm back. We're here. Next week is that event at Kerner Camera. I'm calling it a Canon event because it's C80 and C400 related. And then the 5th of February, the first Wednesday of February, will be the first Camera Flask of 2025. So stars are aligning. Myself, Ben Barden, Caleb Pike are all available. We all have it on our calendar. I send out the email I send out to both of them with the invite and all that kind of stuff. So there you go. Need some recommendations. Brandon's coming in for his studio build for a PTZ camera similar to the Sony FR7 but using APS-C. That's a good question. First of all, why not the FR7? We've used them in production. I used them last year when I produced the camera side of the Blackstone event with Abel Cine. But why not that camera? And I'm not actually sure if there are APS-C PTZ cameras out there. There probably are, but I'm not personally aware of them that I'm aware of. I mean, you can take a Super 35 millimeter or APS-C base camera and you can convert it to a PTZ style operation. I mean, the Sony FR7 is, it's a take on the I guess FX3. The only thing I would look into, Brandon, and I don't know the answer to this, to be honest with you, is whether or not the FR7 has a crop mode. Because if it does, the camera body isn't like insanely expensive. So maybe that's the way you get around it. But then I don't know if it's like the FX3, where if you go into a crop mode because of the megapixels, if you are forced into a 1080p resolution as opposed to having an option for 4K. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. We were using it as a full frame camera. I know that there are really only certain lenses that are recommended for that, and I think that may be the problem in terms of what you're talking about, in order to get the PTZ functionality with it. And if you got to do that, yeah. Does anybody here calling all of the, hold on, myself not included, Brandon not included, the other 14 people here, should be 114, 144 people. Are there anyone? Is there anyone out there that knows of a smaller sensor? And the question I have for you, Brandon, if I have a couple of questions for you, actually. I believe that there are micro four thirds PTZ cameras. I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that there are. I think you should be looking at. Sorry. Let me just move that microphone. It's pointing in the wrong direction because I was over here yesterday for the daily drop. I apologize. You're probably not hearing a huge difference. Panasonic is definitely a company that's in the PTZ game pretty seriously. So I would look into Panasonic, see if there's micro four thirds, but then even smaller sensor, if you're in a completely controlled environment, or is it like a mix and match situation where you're going to have a lot of different cameras in there and you want to do some stuff with PTZ? So light level wise, you need to be consistent. The other company, I'm just going to try to give you as much information. Look into Panasonic, Mr. Brandon. Give me 1 second, and I'll make sure I'm pronouncing the name of the company correctly. That's it. Obspot is what I was looking for, Jeff. Thank you. But do you know if Obspot does anything larger than, let's say, a half, 2/3, or 1-inch sensor? But I think that the problem you may be trying to solve, Brandon, is that you want to be able to use, you really want to be able to use other cameras at the same time in the space, or am I wrong about that? I kind of need that information. That's kind of how I feel. Somebody's going to have to look at that Canon CR N100. I have no idea. Looking at this OBSBot one, which is a new one that's on the home page of their website. 4K. Don't know what the sensor size is. It's AI powered. Imagine that there's a product that's coming to market that is touting that it's AI powered, which is the OBSBot Tail Air. But I'm seeing if I can find any information. You know, when they don't put sensor size at the beginning, that's probably not a good sign. I mean, I don't say a bad sign, but 1.8 f1.8 aperture, some sort of pitch size on the pixels for low light shooting. I would look at OBSBot. Look at that Tail Air. This is going into a new build. Decent long. Look into the OBSBot. I'm DeBrown. I see posted it as well. Okay. David, so I've seen Pro Audio on set send a wireless signal to director's headphones. Can the Mix Pre 3 do that? And if yes, what gear do you need to do it? Well, it's an audio transmitter and receiver. So if you're not sending, I mean, I don't know. If you mean by Pro Audio, you need to send Pro Audio. I wouldn't consider sending audio wirelessly Pro Audio per se, though it is. I mean, there's plenty of wireless transmitters and receivers. What you can potentially do with a Mix Pre 3.2 is you've got the stereo out, right? That's exactly what I'm using right now. So I'm going XLR mic into the Mix Pre 6.2, same thing. And then out of the stereo out, that's what's feeding directly into the camera that I'm using. So to that end, and Caleb has done a lot of stuff like this, what you would basically do is you take the signal that's coming out of that, and it could be, you know, I don't think there's an XLR out on the Mix Pre's. But what you could do is you could do an 1/8 inch into a wireless transmitter. That could be anything. It could be the Lark M2S. It could be the Rode blah blah blah. Not the Lark M2S. Ignore that. That's a different video and for a different purpose. Well, actually, maybe, because that does have a camera out, so you might be able to do that. But what you would essentially do is, like the Wireless Pro from Rode would be a great example. You come out of the Mix Pre into that. That becomes your wireless transmitter, and then you send that to the receiver. And I think you can do headphones on that. That's a good question. I'm pretty sure you can. There's definitely ways to do it with wireless systems. 100%. There are wireless transmitter and receivers. The only problem is, for you, David, you might have to get a splitter, because if you want to use that signal that's coming out of the Mix Pre to go somewhere else, then you might have to kind of split that signal between the two. There's definitely a way to do it, though. I just have to think through the routing of it. So there you go. Just for the director to hear dialogue. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm spitballing here, David, but I think that that's probably the direction you're going to go. Yeah, there is, right? There is a headphone jack on the Wireless Pro. So that would be a way to do it. What you might have to do, always makes me slightly nervous, is for that stereo out, you'd have to get a splitter. So you're basically taking that signal and pushing it to 2 places. One would be male to male, which would be for the male to male, so that you could plug into the Wireless Pro receiver, because that's a female connector, and then you would need a male to female on the other side of it, so that you could take a cable and or even a female to male cable to your camera. There's a way to do it. What camera and lens did I use on my Los Angeles job? Well, they were shooting the project in 8K compressed RAW on a Venice 2. Hoo-ha. I was shooting the majority of the project that I was doing on the Sony FX30. That camera right there. Which is going back to B&H soon, actually. And I have pretty much made the decision, and I'm definitely not brand loyal in that way. I've got some new Canon gear coming in very soon, and I think my next sort of production kit is going to be either two C80s or a C400 and a C80 for, like, interviews and the types of productions I do with two cameras. But I'm pretty dang sure that I am going to purchase a Sony FX30 because it just works. I'd love it to have A7, low light capabilities. Like, I'd love for it to be able to do the same kind of noise levels as an A7 series, like A7R series, was A7R3, like really clean, high ISO. But honestly, for the stuff that I'm doing, there's generally enough light for me to ride that line where 3200 is definitely acceptable on the FX30. And I'm usually bouncing between 800, 1600, 3200 is sort of that range, and the ISOs that I'm living in, but I'd say 800 to 32. And the FX30 does great with that, especially if you're shooting with, a relatively fast lens of the 2.8 and that kind of stuff. So that's my answer to your question. All right. I'm the Browns jumping in with some stuff. There you go. Got some information. And Jeff says that's why I keep an FX30 in the kit at all times. Solid camera isn't perfect. It's just, look, for the money, I'm just, I've said it, I believe, more than once. For the money, you kind of can't beat it for a small little mirrorless cinema camera, right? It's got all of the key ingredients that you'd want in there for what it's good at doing. And you turn on the lens compensation stuff and you slap a Sigma 18 to 50 on that sucker, and you can shoot all day long with that sucker. And it's so comfortable. Standard image stabilization. You can get into, I think it's called dynamic in that one, where it crops in even more. And I would take that over shooting even with that camera on a gimbal pretty much all the time for the way that I shoot. The way that I shoot. I can't really give you a quick review of the Venice 2. It's a beast. It's amazing. It's, great in pretty much any production environment. It's really Sony's Alexa. Doesn't have quite the dynamic range and latitude of the Alexa 35, but the Venice 2 is a full frame camera, and it can shoot up to 8K, and it's a beast. I'm going to say for high-end production that you have people generally shooting on ARRI cameras, Alexa Mini, LF, Alexa LF, and the Alexa 35, which is a smaller sensor, super 35 millimeter, Venice 2, and then higher end red cameras. Those are the ones that are pretty much sitting in the high end of it, unless people are doing Panavision rentals. Marshall's saying, curious to hear what's got you looking at the 8400C combo. Well, first and foremost, I mean, I have a long history with Canon. It's a pretty predictable, user experience for me personally in terms of what I'm going to get out of the cameras. And I've seen Cine D's tests on the dynamic range, and I'm well aware of the pluses and minuses of shooting in RAW on that camera. That's not really what's attracting me to the camera. I mean, sure, I want to have the option to shoot in a 6K resolution, and there's a lot of advantages to that, but it's probably not going to be the format, or at least the resolution I'm going to be using, on a regular basis. But that said, both cameras share the same sensor. So if I'm going in and I'm shooting an interview, it's, in my mind, a lot easier to have two matching cameras. I mean, I've done it with the FX30 and the A7C2, and they're actually really close. I mean, I don't have a problem using those two. But there are advantages to the RF lens mount in terms of being able to program the rings. Some lenses have one ring that you can program, some have two, some have three. There's an assignable button on some of the lenses, like the 135 millimeter one, 135 millimeter one. And I just know that what I'm going to do, I think that that's going to be a good combination for me. Now, that doesn't mean that's the only combination that's out there. I think a lot of people would do well with, an FX6 and, an FX3 or an FX9 and FX6 or whatever it's going to be. But just be careful in terms of matching sensors and do your research and your homework, because to me, going into a two-camera system, which is what a lot of us use in terms of corporate work, it's how easy is the post-process in terms of matching those cameras, or how difficult is it? How many hoops do you have to jump through to do that? And as budgets aren't necessarily getting better nowadays, anything I can do to get to the finish line faster is, to me, a big advantage in terms of production. So I hope that answers your question, Marshall, about the C400 and C80. I've had great experience. Somebody mentioned at the top of the hour getting a C100 Mark II, fantastic camera, 4K sensor, only shoots 1080, center frame autofocus, not the best autofocus in the world, but you know what? Great camera overall, and you can get it for a song nowadays. But then again, depending on what you're looking at buying it for and what you're trying to do, advantages to that camera, of course, are that you have, XLR input functionality with the handle and things like that. I still have my two C100 Mark Is. I'm debating what to do with them. I will probably donate them at some point. I just feel like it's hard for me to give them, like, it's like my DVX 100B. Do I really want to give that camera away when it had so much to do with me learning what I know now, or was a tool that I used to learn so much? So maybe what will wind up happening is I'll donate one of those C100 Mark Is and keep the other one just for nostalgia. Because there's not a lot of value in it, and if you look at the realities of what people can get now for less than $1,000 US, that's new. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there. Yeah, those C100s behind me, you're crazy. Like, anybody wants to see the back of my giant bald alien head. What are you talking about? Come on. You want me to go East Coast on? All right. And I'm a little bit of a pack rat, and I'm very nostalgic about the equipment that I learned with on whatever. So, and Pat's had good luck with the FX9, FX3 combo. It took Pat 150 years to upgrade his camera. In fact, I think that's how we basically started conversing. Was the Pat was really trying to figure out how he was going to upgrade from the dinosaur days. Did you have an EX1 or EX3, Pat? I can't remember exactly. Am I wrong about that? Maybe I have that wrong, but yes. Um, did I just hear C100 giveaway? Yeah, giveaway to my old school. Brandon, you crazy. Like for kids who can learn, content creation. EX3, there it is. Boom. Yeah, you're not getting rid of that EX3, Pat. You know, it's just, it's part of you. Is it? I think so. When you have had a piece of equipment for so long that it is just part of your history of doing something that you love, yeah, on the wall behind you would be a good. Well, it's on one of the C100s. It's black, so you can't really see it, and you definitely can't see it with this background right now. But one of them is on that shelf. And yes, I remember, Pat. So you went from that EX3 to the FX9. I had an EX1 for a long time. PTZ mount that sucker. Come on. That's all kinds of re-rigging and everything to make it a pan tilt zoom camera with no autofocus or lack really crappy one. Yeah. And Pat used that EX3 as a B camera. 1080 only, but still produced a good image. And it was, I've talked about this in the past. The DVX 100, DVX 100B, there was it holds a special place in camera history. But then when press pause or stop, rewind. When Panasonic released the HVX 200, it was to me personally, it was a letdown because we're moving from an SD base to an HD base camera, and it was, it had a little bit of that Panasonic magic, that slightly oversaturated, those yellows and those reds especially. It just had a certain look to it. But the HD was soft. And when I got my hands on the EX1, and you have cameras like the EX3, basically same sensor, different kind of configuration, interchangeable lens as opposed to fixed lens. That camera was sharp, and we were using 35 millimeter lens adapters back then, and that wasn't helping the cause. So the sharper the camera, great. That definitely helped. I need a battery for my flip cam. I've got one somewhere in a drawer. I don't think the battery works anymore, but I remember flip cams. What are you doing to me? Making my head remember things. Pat's saying, anybody want to play with the DV Cam DSR 300? FX30 doesn't take CF Express Type A cards, or it might be able to because maybe the card slot's the same. I don't have any reason to use that. I just use fast SD XC cards. I can do whatever I need to do in that camera with those. So if it does take them, I wasn't aware of it. Maybe there's an advantage to using them, but I have to say that, the secret sauce on all of these cameras nowadays is 10-bit 422, and I have found, regardless of manufacturer, that as long as I'm not pushing and pulling that image very much in post-production, if I'm getting my exposure in the ballpark and I've got my white balance in the ballpark, that I'm usually shooting at 100 or 200 megabits per second, in that range, depending on the camera and what it can do. We shot for years on the XT4 for a client. We had, I think, maybe 5 or 6 of them in rotation, and we were shooting almost exclusively all green screen, but that 10-bit 422 was sort of the thing that made all the difference in the world. Don't let anybody else tell you otherwise. Look, I'm not saying that if I had the choice that I wouldn't shoot raw, or log all of the time, but it's just not the reality of the type of work that I do. So I've stopped pretending that I'm, holding the torch for, capturing the most amount of data in a camera so that I can do the most with it in post production. And very oftentimes I'm taking the approach of, let's try to get this as close as we want it to be in camera. And having 10-bit 422 definitely helps. We have a little bit more leeway in terms of how we can push and pull the image. And, data rate does help as well. It's, you're allocating more of those bits for all of the information that you're capturing. But I don't necessarily feel that in sort of this corporate small crew production environment, unless you're going outside and you're dealing with, huge dynamic range differences between your blacks and your whites and all those gray values in between and your chroma information, that that you have to shoot in log or raw all of the time at very high data rates. And it's just not necessarily sustainable all of the time anyway. It's definitely going to be an adjustment for me to go into the C80 and the C400 again in terms of having those higher data rates. In studio, it's a little easier when I'm doing the daily drop. There are some slight color shifts that happen when I'm recording in camera or recording to Ecamm Live versus in camera. But for what I'm doing, and if I dial things in pretty closely, it's not that significantly different for me to go that route. And that's kind of how I approached the job I just did in LA with the FX30. Not everything's going to be perfect, but this was a lighting based project anyway. And it was to show off lights. And so the cinematographer and the chief lighting technician / gaffer, they were using all kinds of color temperatures and all kinds of different things and mixing color temperatures and stuff like that. So basically what I did was, when I was shooting an interview with somebody and I had control over what my lighting was going to be, then I went in and I dialed in a particular Kelvin temperature. But the rest of the time that I was shooting, I was spraying. I was just going all over the all over the set. And I just set the camera to auto white balance, because if I had locked it into 3200, 4400, or 5600, I would have had probably more problems than allowing the camera to try to make decisions. Now, you risk and you will run into situations when you're moving from one place to another, or you're panning the camera somewhere, you're tilting the camera somewhere, seeing a white balance shift because of what the camera's seeing in frame. But it wasn't worth, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze when it came to, shooting in log. I started in log and I was like, this is just a mess. Let me just bake it. TJ says, I also always think about those compounded costs, both real money, like in drives and cards, and just time spent moving all that media around when considering if I'm going raw or 422 10-bit. Yeah, exactly. It was a very fun shoot, and yes, spraying like a cat, better get that cat handled. It's just my term. Maybe other people say it, but when you are just grabbing what you can, I call it spraying. It's kind of the reverse of spraying. It's like being a vacuum cleaner. You're just sucking stuff up, right? But it's that idea that you're not making it precious, but you are trying to. When you find a frame, you might be trying to find it. When you find something, then you just kind of hone in on it and you try to get some stuff that can be used, give the editor some handles, give post-production what they need to be able to grab bits. I would say we're going to pray and spray, not spray and pray. You got to pray first, Marshall. Then you got to spray. Flip it if you pray. All right. There you go. What's happening here? Yeah, look, we're kind of cooking along here. I think actually on February 5th, when we do the Camera Flask, we'll also do, I don't think we're going to do a challenge this month. I'm giving B&H a break. I'm giving the channel a little bit of a break on that. But on February 5th, when we do Camera and Flask, we'll do the giveaway for a second, third prize, a trivia thing. I think it'll be fun to do that. And again, that'll be Wednesday, February 5th, 3 p.m. Pacific time. Blah-de-dee, 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 blah. All right, we got 20 minutes here. No, you got to pray before the shoot, Marshall. Come on. I'm not talking about you're not praying and then shooting. You are yeah, you know what I'm saying. All right, let's get some at the C47s going again. And while I'm waiting for that and having a drink of water, NAB 2025. April 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. The 9th doesn't count, by the way, unless you want to walk around a ghost town. But Saturday the 6th, Sunday the 6th, Monday the 7th, Tuesday the 8th. That's really when the stuff happens. Yes, David, the slate is clean on contests again. You qualify, okay, Mr. Fancy Light Man. How's that ADC treating you? Hoping to get a 1200X and an ADC in here at some point in the nearish future. Excited to check out those fixtures. Having a lot of fun using apertures. Not using apertures fixtures, just sort of reading about and finding out about that technology. The lights we were looking at in LA look very cool. And then Nanlite stuff, just solid as a rock, you know. They're definitely innovating, but in a quieter way. You know, I was kind of looking at this and talking about it with somebody recently. At the moment, I'm kind of looking at aperture. They're kind of like the Sony, right? They're really like just going for it, and there's a lot of stuff there. And I feel like this is maybe not the right analogy, but it's working for me right now. That Nanlite and Nanlux, both under the Nangwang, umbrella. Nanlux sort of like the 900 watt and higher fixtures, and then Nanlite sort of the 700-ish watts lower fixtures. They're kind of like more like Canon, right? You're getting consistent, good quality products that really work day in, day out. Not that apertures don't, but there's just a different company vibe going on there. Yeah. Had to use the word vibe. I'm stoked. It's rad. There you go. Jeff, I'm, by the way, sorry you're not feeling well, along with being freezing cold. Not a good combo. I'm on the fence for NAB. Tons of conferences to do this year, I guess related to your industry. They just actually didn't postpone. I wouldn't say it's postponed. They decided not to move forward with Cine Gear New York in March. But you say I got more traction from companies emailing me directly, not related to NAB, than going to NAB yielded. The networking is fun. Yeah, I mean, you know, for me, NAB is a little, I'm not going to say different, Jeff, but this might be like year 23 or 24 for me. So it's important for me to be at the show for a number of reasons, and I have some plans of what I would like to do in terms of content and content creation, and that's sort of what I'm going to be working on besides getting some other videos out. Not going to get the Nano 2 video out today. Been working with it, calibrating the Ronin, doing some other stuff, and just getting sucked into a lot of other stuff. But for me, NAB is, it's really become as much friends as it is colleagues. A lot of people who have been colleagues for a long time have transitioned to becoming friends. So I sort of didn't know until a few days ago, even the last couple of days, like, I wasn't, and this is the time of year that I figured out I'm not going to be doing workshops or sessions and stuff unless some presentations come up that are related to manufacturers, which is something I've done. But it's just so important for me to connect with a lot of people that I get to see. Some of them only once a year, some of them I get to see a couple of times a year. And so it is important. I'm going to go into Vegas on Saturday. I'll be there for the 3 core days of the show, which will be Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and I think I'll be busy. It's definitely not a relaxed walk and talk and just hang out on the floor type of thing. And I'll get my press pass, and and we'll see. But it's still, for me personally, an important show. It doesn't mean that I think that shows like that are going to last forever, but there's other components to it that are important enough for me to be there. And there's a lot of companies that travel internationally, and I'm not an IBC person. I've never been there. So, yeah, I hope you, yeah, send me those results, David. I'd love to see that 1/6 scale Star Wars photo shoot with the ADC Storm ADC. Marshall just picked up a couple of those FS 300Bs on Black Friday. They're awesome. So much light, very solid build, no ballast, and I can fit 2 in a Peli 1510. Yeah, which just goes right into the overhead bin on a regular, not on a, like a puddle. What do they call them? Yeah, you know what I mean. One of the little ones. Marshall's been trying to get there since 2016. This year might be the year. Look, I think, friends, how many of us have? I think we'll do, like a little meetup on the floor. Nothing crazy, but it's nice to really connect. And so as we start to get closer to the show, I don't think Caleb's going this year. I know Ben's not going, but as of really yesterday, I made the official decision. I'm going, and that's what's happening. Yeah. And yeah, those FS 300Bs are great. And there's still Amaran too. I mean, Amaran doesn't make a chip on board light that's above 200 watts right now, but the 200XS is a pretty remarkable low cost bicolor light as well. Yes. Benzin Video Productions. Does that mean you finally made it to the live stream, or you finally are going to? It's like the anticipation. You upgraded your cameras. What and welcome to the stream. I don't think you really post very much, Benson. So can you tell me what you upgraded to? I'm excited to hear about it. Marshall says, David, yeah, they flew under the radar for me. Very impressed. Boom, boom, boom. Jeff says, I totally get it. It's 50-50 with people, guys in my circles, who is going and who isn't. Yeah. I happen to know a crap ton of people who are working for companies in the industry, for the manufacturers that exhibit and that are part of it. And those are the people I'm talking about who have transitioned from colleagues to friends. So I'm not saying that's not true for you, Jeff. That might also be true for you. And not everybody's going to exhibit or be there as a company. But for me, at least this year, it's still important. And it's also it's reinforced for me as a decision because my son's graduating high school the same weekend that Cine Gear is happening in LA. That is an every year show for me. It's one of my absolute favorite shows. and I won't be going this year. So it's kind of important for me to go to NAB this year. Oh, McKnight's. All right, you're rebranding here across the boards. You went from C100 Mark 1 to the C70. That's like that's like Pat's EX3 to FX9 jump. It really is. Um, yeah, that's a big move. 1, 2, yeah. There you go. Cine Gear LA is great. It's awesome. You know, um, was weird being in LA during those fires, but other than that, I didn't do Atlanta the year. Wait, I did or didn't do Atlanta? I'm confused by that post. Oh, I did. Okay, yeah. When they're doing shows like Cine Gear and the like in other locations, it's just not the same. I don't know how it can be the same, but there you go. Yeah. Are you saying, well, look, I'd love to go to Amsterdam and hang out in Europe in September. That would be fantastic. But I can't get on an airplane and justify going there unless I'm doing something for work. And that hasn't presented itself in the past. And why C70s McKnights instead of C80s? Just timing, price, blah, blah, blah. There you go. Just wondering. Yes, NAB would be fun to cover as part of it. Yeah, NAB light, but anytime, I mean, that at least is on a in or on a sound stage, right? It's on a lot. So there's at least a vibe there. When Cine Gear LA was forced to be at the LA Convention Center, it was just poopy pants, to be honest. It was almost as bad as pumpkin pie. All right. We got about 8 minutes left. We're cranking along here. Nice interaction. What else we got to talk about? Because we're not back for another couple of weeks. And speaking of vibes, that's going to be Camera Flask, which has a different vibe than the weekly live stream, for better or for worse. So what do we got? What else are we going to talk about? Let's go. Let's get another subject up here. I'm making sure the world hasn't blown up in the last 53 minutes, and it doesn't seem like it has. And yeah, not getting the answers I was looking for. And trying to figure out what my daily drop's going to be about today. I do want to talk a little bit about the industry, and I've had a lot of conversations with people about that. But yeah, all my glass works. Oh, well, your 17 to 55 should work on the C80 in Super 35, right? And I'm not saying you should have gone with C80. The C70 is a great camera. It's Super 35, not full frame. But if you're getting it and you can go into two bodies, probably the main difference is full frame, for sure. That's no question about it. The big difference, full frame 6K camera, improved AF, but it's not revolutionary. It's evolutionary. But that makes sense. Yeah. I'm not having you rethink your decision, but in specifically having to do with the 17 to 55 f2.8 lens, I don't see there being any reason why you couldn't use it with the camera. And yes, Harrison. Yeah, Harrison's coming in at the end of the stream with a comment. SDI out is that is definitely an advantage. And I don't know the answer to that question in terms of if it's too late to return them. But, that's a question that that's something you're going to have to look into. And I'm not trying to cast doubt on it because C70s are workhorse cameras. You just, whenever I'm looking at equipment, and maybe I'm an anomaly, but God only knows how specific I get in terms of comparing what would make me make the decision to decide on one thing over another and what would be the best solution for that. Um, you know, and for me, this is the right time to start looking at upgrading my equipment. You know, the last what I would consider digital cinema camera that I that I have and own is the C200. And that sensor is soft, and it's interesting that camera, unlike the DVX100B, unlike the C100 Mark One, I to a certain degree the EX1 I had that attachment, but it just couldn't justify it. Um, I don't have like FS700. I don't have an emotional attachment to the C200, which is pretty interesting. So I just don't. I don't have that emotional. I had that emotional attachment with DVX100B, emotional attachment with the C100 Mark One, emotional attachment with the 5D Mark II. It's all cameras I still have. I'd be happy to sell the C200. We can absolutely bring back FireWire and make sure that it can connect with a dongle to my SideQuest drive, and maybe my I never really had a Jazz drive, but I had a zip drive. That's also somewhere around. Yeah, understood. JK. Pat's still here. Depends on who you're talking to at the shows, but most companies send all the important folks so you can get some good input. It is true, especially at shows like NAB. And you're not going to talk to them on day one, or please don't. And we'll talk more about NAB later on. I mean, we've had this discussion. A lot of the regular characters are here, but you know how it goes. Yeah, my zip drive. Those were reliable. Those Jazz drives were, bleh. Those were poopy. Those were pumpkin pies. Yeah, there's a lot of E mount, but I would kind of hope the L mount alliance could shake things up. It's been an alliance for a long time. I don't know if it's shaking it up enough, yeah. Um, Brandon, you going to NAB? You're taking the drive? Yeah, but I'm the Brown. Did you have a SideQuest drive? I've got an 88. Reads 88s. Backwards compatible 44s. Am I showing my age just slightly? I think I am, but that's okay. I feel young. It's all good. That's the main reason I go to NAB. I've got problems to solve. Yeah. Free coffee. Yeah. That's true. Or espresso at least. You got to do Americanos. I'm there 2025. SideQuest for sure. My God, that dongle. I mean that cable, and then terminators. You gotta do the Quadra 950. You gotta terminate your SCSI chain. Garbage, man. But you know what? It was great. It was great, and we learned, and we moved on, and now I have a MacBook Pro M2 Max. That I've had going on 3 years, and it's like it doesn't even hiccup at what I throw at it. At some point I'll get the M5 Max, when I've got a lot of work coming in and I can go for the next one up. But man, the silicon chips, beasts when it comes to the type of work that I do. Power Tower Pro 225. I was there working at CompUSA the day that Windows 95 was launched. And I was the Mac guy. They had in Paramus, is it Paramus? Not Paramus, in Parsippany, New Jersey. I was hired the general manager of the of the CompUSA. That's a longer story, but he was a Mac guy, and he wanted to put like a Mac specialist inside of the store. Was I a Mac specialist? I became one, but and I did a lot of consulting and stuff. But we kind of had like an Apple store within the CompUSA. But Windows 95, that was I had the red shirt. CompUSA or bust. It bust. Did. There you go. Oh, dip. Yeah, 3 dongles down. All right. I'm going to end this thing in a second. Marsh says, I think I'm most excited to see the final specs for the BMD 17K 65 millimeter. Curious to see if they keep all the same specs from the 12K. Oh, whoa. Huh. Just heard a really loud noise outside of my window. Hold on 1 second. I'll let you know if everything's okay. I have no idea what the hell that was, but it sounded like something was on my roof and it just fell off. I'm gonna end the live stream. I think it's gonna be okay. I hope I'm not finding something that's a big project. You never know. So let me finish that. So specs from 12K full frame and just add more for LF or leave some out. Yeah. Company issued M1 chugs along, and the M1s chugs along just fine most of the time. Yeah, but at this point, people are going to the M4s and they're saying it's like a huge upgrade. PowerBook 140. I had a PowerBook Duo back in the day. All right, we're being nostalgic here, which is a good thing. Cats, birds, mannequins. You heard it. If you heard it with the noise assist, I better go and see what's happening. The C100s are trying to escape. The start of a horror movie would get David over here because he specializes in there. There's a lava cat knocking on the window. Oh, you guys are crazy. Check the mannequin. Don't let it end this way. Catch you next time. I hope. Take an aspirin. No, nobody said that. I expected that from you, Pat. Yeah, it was loud. I'm going to go. You guys are awesome. I appreciate you coming to the live stream every week. Tell your friends, and they'll show up and they'll say, what the hell is this? And we'll go from there. I don't know what it was, but there's nothing upstairs that's on sort of a weird angle. Hope it was OJ dropping a glove. With that, we end the stream. Everybody take care of yourself. I'll see you on the other side. See you. Bye.